Could the Auburn Tigers start the season 4-0? I don't think it's a stretch.
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining us from Crain and Company in the Daily Wire, it is Jake Crain, the man, the myth, the legend, and we're going to talk about Kamarion Franklin. We're going to talk about Payton Thorne and other fall camp standouts. But first things first, let's look, because the season's close enough at this point, Jake. 4-0. Is it possible for the Auburn Tigers to go 4-0 before they host the Georgia Bulldogs in the Deep South's oldest rivalry for their fifth game this season? That includes a road trip to Cal and a road trip to Texas A&M. Jake Crain, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think with what Hugh Freeze has done with the roster, especially on the offensive line, you have games that, and as people that are watching it, media members, as fans are in the same boat as well. We have the luxury of being able to look ahead. The main thing that Hugh Freeze and I know his staff's going to do, and Auburn's not to a point, you really never want to get to a point where your team can look ahead and you're saying, all right, well, week 4, we better play well, or week 7, we better play well. They've got to take it one snap at a time. And not just when they're building the roster, that's the blueprint that Nick Saban lays. That's what Kirby Smart does. But when you look, the non-conference, Auburn should be better than every team they play. Starting out in the non-conference and obviously finishing there at the end with New Mexico State. Cal is one of those teams, they're just bad enough to scare you. That's what worries you. Because, again, you can sit here and preach, hey, listen, this is a quality ball club. It's a quality ball club, but the players got to watch the film. They have to watch the tape. And women lie, men lie, numbers in the eye in the sky, they don't lie. So deep down, you can sit here and tell yourself, we have to play our best. We have to play our best. And you want that mantra. But when you click that film on, and it looks like you got a bunch of people that are on the debate team out there playing, it's hard to hide that. Not that Cal doesn't have some quality players. They do. I'm not out here saying, they're the little giants or anything like that. But when it comes to personnel and ability, players know. It's the same thing I said about NIL in the locker room when they're like, oh, well, are you worried that, it's going to mess up the locker room if this player's getting paid and he's not playing? Well, at the end of the day, the players are going to know who the best player at each position is. So if you're a guy that's an older guy that got his job taken, well, if that kid's a better player, it's hard for you to go around the locker room and sit there and say, oh, I'm getting screwed. Oh, I'm getting screwed. So when they turn that film on, it's something you got to be a professional, right? That's when it comes down to how mature is your team. But therein lies the value of being in year one. Therein lies the value of not being relevant really when it comes to championships and trophies for a little bit. Auburn doesn't have that luxury to be able to sit back and say, well, we can just roll our helmet out there and win. So the Texas A&M game is obviously the big one, right? When you're looking at it from a fan perspective, can you go on the road in a hostile environment, a place that Auburn has played well at the end of the day? But I think this Texas A&M team with Bobby Petrino, they've got a big litmus test at Miami. Is Miami the best team in the world? No, but we're going to know a lot more about Texas A&M. I like Connor Wegman. I like the Bobby Petrino hire. At Auburn, that's going to be the first game where they play personnel that's probably from a depth standpoint better than what they have. So if they can somehow get by that one and play clean, catch a couple breaks, Auburn's going to have to be 4-0 for sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest test is the A&M trip, because all the arguments that are pro-Cal in the Auburn-Cal matchup, I'm just not buying them. Our Locked On Pac-12 host, Spencer McLaughlin, he's really high on Cal, and he thinks Cal's going to beat Auburn, and he told me the reason why is because they brought in a lot of transfers, and they had the number 16 transfer class. And it's like, that's not an argument. Auburn's transfer class is significantly better and significantly rated higher, so that doesn't even make sense. But the A&M matchup, to me, is interesting because I just kind of think the whole Petrino thing's going to work. I don't know why. I just kind of got a feeling that it's going to be kind of a scary combination between him and Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, I let off the show, I believe it was Monday, with why I think it's going to work. And there's a lot of reasons. And, people kind of point to the ego stuff. And listen, the Miami game's huge, right? Sure. That could be a springboard game. That could be a step back game. You don't ever want to just say one game can decide a season. But when you look at where A&M is, when you look at the questions that surround them, when you look at what has happened, previously under the Jimbo Fisher regime, it's that first 3rd and 7 call is going to be really interesting. But look, play calling is a team effort. That's something, if you've never been on a headset, it doesn't make much sense. But if you have, there's multiple guys looking at multiple spots. A lot goes into calling plays. At the end of the day, if the head coach wants to run it, you're going to run it. If the head coach wants to throw it, you're going to throw it. That's why he's the head man. But Jimbo Fisher's kind of in that Kevin Steele now at Alabama. A lot of cachet coming in, going to have a longer leash. It's going to be Nick Saban's defense, but he's going to let Kevin Steele do what Kevin Steele wants to do most of the time because it's a guy he has a lot of respect for. It's obviously one of the reasons he brought in. And, hell, Kevin Steele's been in the game as long as Nick Saban has. I mean, Bobby Petrino has been in the game as long, if not longer, than Jimbo Fisher has. So, if it goes bad, everybody has an ego in this profession. Some are bigger than others. But here's the thing. When it comes to Cal, if Auburn plays well and Cal plays well, Auburn's going to win. A lot of people don't realize most teams lose games. They don't win them. That's why, you try and suffocate people and make them make the first mistake.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the A&M game, it's going to come down to up front. Is Auburn going to be able to run the ball? Now, I know we're going to talk about the quarterback battle. I don't want to jump the shark on that one.
Sure.
But A&M's really good up front. They return a lot of talent on the offensive line and the defensive line, and that's where that game's going to be won. And I would put it at probably 60-40 A&M right now. But, hell, we haven't even kicked the ball off yet, Zach.
Yeah, and I made the case earlier in the offseason, Jake, that this A&M game is the most important game on Auburn's schedule. And I'm sure they're not going to prepare for this game any different than any other game this season. But these players know, this is their chance to really make a statement, especially if they beat Cal 2 weeks prior and they've got a chance to be 4-0 and then the next week host Georgia. I think if they start off 4,
yeah,
it could be. I think they'd be ranked the top 20 team just because of how the media views A&M. I think that'd be a pretty big situation to be in. They're going to be aware of what's at stake here and kind of what's on the table if they want to go in and grab it. So I think it's just an important. I think that game is going to be more important for Auburn than it is for Texas A&M, and I do think stuff like that matters.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to the last part, I think it depends on what happens at Miami. If A&M goes and lays an egg at Miami and then they drop it to Auburn, it could go downhill really, really quickly there in Aggie land, and then vice versa. But I will say, this is where playing at Cal, I think, helps you.
Good point.
Because, it's obviously, you don't have to be Christopher Columbus to figure out Cal's a further trip than A&M, but this is the first time that this team has traveled with this coaching staff. Different coaching staffs prepare differently when you go on the road. So I think having that experience, and this is where having an experienced quarterback, Robbie Ashford included. I mean, Robbie Ashford played at Bama. It doesn't get any harder than that, bud.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, I think that trip to Cal can help you somewhat just from a structure standpoint. But make no mistake, they know this will be the biggest test that they've faced so far. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And imagine if Hugh Freeze is able to take this Auburn team into College Station and get a big win against an undefeated, possibly undefeated A&M team on the road. That would be a hell of an accomplishment, and it's one of those swing games, right? We talk about 8-4, 7-5, ceiling 9-3. This one at Arkansas, those are two that if you're able to split that, 8-4 is really looking like a legitimate possibility.
Sure. All right, Jake, there's been a ton of storylines throughout Auburn's fall camp, specifically with the quarterbacks. But the only storyline that matters was the one that we brought with us into fall camp. We touch on that next right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Football season's about to kick off. Yes, we're all so excited. FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get the bonus bets back every time they win in the regular season. Just pick a team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets back for every victory. And you can use those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Jake Crain of Crain and Company hanging out with us every single Thursday. Jake, there's been a lot of hype about Holden Geriner. He had an impressive scrimmage this past Saturday. It sounds like Robbie Ashford has vastly improved from a year ago, which props to him for putting in the work. But the storyline that seems to be most important is the one that we came in to the fall camp with. And that's Payton Thorne came here from Michigan State to be Auburn's starting quarterback. And it seems like he's still the favorite to do so based off of how the last few practices since the scrimmage has gone. Are you surprised by this at all? Or you say, no, this certainly makes sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you listen or watch Crain and Company, or you obviously listen or watch this show, last time I came on here and we talked about this, it's going exactly how we kind of forecasted it would. I do think Payton Thorne's going to win the job, but Robbie Ashford is going to play. Again, if I had, and this is a perfect world and it's a hypothetical, but it's still the preseason, we have to live in hypotheticals. If I had to take a Robbie Ashford operating at 100% and more efficient as a passer, and Payton Thorne operating at 100%, in this offense, I would take Robbie Ashford because he's a bigger threat with his legs. But I think what you're going to see, because the Payton Thorne thing, when you're a new quarterback coming in, you're a new player in general, you didn't go through spring, so you didn't get those live fire reps with the new terminology. And it's not just what the play's called, it's what the formation's called. It's what the personnel grouping's called. It's when you have to check the protections. What are the motions called? What do you call the defenses that you think what do you call cover 2? What do you call cover 6? What do you call cover 3? I can go through it. What do you call your combo coverages, your split coverages?
Sure.
So that takes time. And you going in a meeting room and looking on a board and saying, okay, this is red, this is blue. That's one thing. Going out there and taking the snap when grown men are running at you full speed and you have to process, all right, here's my read, there's my check down, get rid of it. Or I have to open up this way on the boot, or I have to have this footwork, or this type of drop, or this type of action. It's a lot going on. So I'm not surprised that Payton Thorne hasn't outright won the job, but I do think the experience factor that he has a little bit more than Robbie Ashford, but Robbie still has really good experience, as I mentioned. I think Payton's going to win the job, but I think Robbie is going to play a significant amount of snaps each game, short yardage situations, whether that be third, whether that be fourth, red zone situations. I think they're going to line Robbie Ashford up at wide receiver in a couple of these formations and have some plays built in. Because, again, if I'm trying to use my personnel to the fullest, right, and I'm sitting here and saying, how can I threaten the defense the most? Well, Robbie Ashford's one of the best athletes on the field when he's out there. All right, we know he can catch. Now, I'm not saying he's Devontae Adams, but we know he can catch the ball, and obviously he can run and make moves. That's who he is at heart. But if I line him up at slot, now if I'm a safety, I have a problem. Because if they throw some type of bubble, some type of swing action to him that allows him to be able to still be an eligible passer, I can't just lose my mind running up. Like, I have to manipulate the way I play. If I'm a defensive play caller, I have to manipulate the way that I teach that week. Because all you have to do is put it on film a couple times. We used to do the same thing on punt. I would put one of our backup quarterbacks, and we had a kid named Trey Fettner, who was our third string quarterback, kind of our wildcat guy, threw it just well enough to scare you. And he played our personal protector on punt. And we used to have punt return teams just staying safe because they were scared to death we were going to snap it to them and have some sort of pass combination that they weren't ready for out there. So just you could throw in the bubble and just let them run. You could throw in the bubble, have the outside receiver stalk and go. There's 12 different things that you can send him in motion, hand him the ball behind the line of scrimmage, run a throwback. It adds another wrinkle. And the whole goal, one of the biggest goals of an offensive coordinator is to steal a defensive coordinator's practice time. How can I steal an extra 7 to 10 minutes every day from you so you're not implementing new things or working on our base stuff? And I think Robbie Ashford gives you that element in multiple ways.
So that's interesting. So you said significant amount of snaps. How many snaps is that a game, Jake?
If we're saying every position, right? Quarterback, wide receiver, whatever you want to call it, I would not be shocked if he got anywhere between 15 to 25 snaps a game. Short yardage, things like that. I would not be shocked at all.
I love the idea of him in short yardage. I love it. Especially on the goal line. Are you kidding me? You're not stopping.
It's the problem. That. Well, and it's not just a problem. Everybody just assumes jump pass, right? Or a pass out of it. The defense can't just load up against the run because he can't throw. Obviously, Robbie can throw it. Robbie can throw it well enough to be competing for the quarterback job at Auburn. But where else it stresses you on the edges, right? Because everybody thinks about, all right, 4th and short, 3rd and short. Right, which to me, I would love for you to get under center and just QB sneak it. I don't understand, like, as a defensive guy, you see in the NFL now, everybody's like, oh my God, the Eagles are the smartest team alive. What? It's the most simple thing to do.
Yeah, Tom Brady did that for 20 years, by the way.
20 years. If every 3rd and 1, I would QB sneak it twice. 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. And if we can't get that, we need to pack up our stuff and go sit our ass back in the bus. That's what we need to do. Excuse my language, but it's the truth. It's football. Grow up, Peter Pan. So when I'm looking at Robbie Ashford, he stretches the perimeter. I can't just load everybody inside because he can outrun everybody to the edge, which opens up what? The inside. They have to play you more even. So you're worried about the pass. You're worried about the interior run. You're worried about the exterior run, which means you are spread out. And when you're spread out, I can do a lot of different things. There's a lot of more operating room to be able to do what I want to do.
Yeah. And also, I mean, everybody thinks about, okay, well, if Robbie's a quarterback and that's where the focus is, been like, sure, but you've still got Rivaldo Fairweather on the field. You've still got all these massive receivers that you brought in, a Jair Shorter, a Camden Brown, a Shane Hooks. And it's like, you've got to deal with that. You've got to deal with that. And if you got more guys on the line of scrimmage, you got less guys covering all those dudes. So I'm with you.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul is a real thing.
I'm all about it. Other guys whose names that you've heard throughout fall camp that have maybe stood out or impressed you so far with what you've heard?
Man, I'm hearing a lot of great things about Cam Stutz at guard.
Okay.
They talk about the way he's elevated his play. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of positive things on the offensive line in general, which, God, thank you, God.
Isn't that nice?
Please, thank you. Like, it's about time. Now, we'll see. They got to go play, but it's going to be nice to not have a group of, just offensive linemen that look like, they're coming out of their senior year of high school in Texas. Like, no offense to the guys. They played hard. They worked hard, but my washing machine works hard. You have to go out there and move people. And the fact that I'm not going to want to puke in my hands on every 3rd and 2 because I know we're about to get stuffed like a Thanksgiving turkey, that's going to make me feel a lot better. Obviously, Jair Shorter, the Fairweather kid's a matchup nightmare. We knew that coming in. But I'm hearing a lot of great things about Damari Alston, too. Obviously, Jarquez, I'm unbelievably excited about Jarquez. But if you have that 1-2 punch with a capable offensive line, with a quarterback that's a threat to run in this RPO system, now and guys that can go get 50-50 balls, you don't have a bunch of, Peter Dinklages running around out there. It's a legitimate problem for defenses.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about this throughout the last few weeks, but I just remember pretty much every offensive line since 2017, we've had to really talk ourselves into like, this guy could be good. This is his 4th year as a starter. Maybe he could figure it out finally. But all of a sudden now these practice windows, you look at the offensive line, it's like, that looks like an SEC offensive line. That looks right.
Yeah. And here's where it helps you out where a lot of people don't realize it. We talk about what's one of Auburn's biggest questions going in this year. It's the pass rush, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what makes the defensive line way better? People always ask me on the show on Crain and Company, man, how do Auburn fans that'll call in, how does Georgia's freshmen and Alabama's freshmen and Michigan's freshmen, how are they able to play at such a high level so quickly? And it feels like it takes a while for Auburn. Well, guess what? When the best player you go against every day, or you go against the best player every day in practice, you only play the other teams one time a week. So it makes it easier. The adjustment is easier because it's a lot harder to go up against the guy, to beat the guy who knows you, number one, knows your moves, and number two, is capable enough to beat you consistently where you become a better player. That's how. Insert whatever cliche you want. Iron sharpens iron, competition. It's the truth. So I think this offensive line is the reason you're hearing that Auburn's pass rush, another place that is improving. They're starting to feel a little bit better about that. And it helps all around. It makes everybody better.
Well, the future of Auburn's roster looks like it could be improving. Will Auburn be getting another 5-star soon? We discuss in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. I want to encourage you to join the Locked On Auburn Discord. It's free. All you have to do is click the link in the episode description down below. Jake Kamarian Franklin making his decision soon. My understanding is it's over this weekend. The 5-star defensive lineman from the state of Mississippi. A lot of crystal balls coming in, pointing Auburn's direction. Sounds like Miami's trying to make a late push. Tennessee's not going anywhere. Ole Miss is begging him to stay home, stay in the SIP. But are we looking at a situation where Auburn may be picking up its 3rd 5-star in the 2024 class?
Oh, God. Just put it on a pillow and smother me to death with it. Just please go to 8-4. Just go 8-4 and keep the recruiting momentum going. I do think Auburn's going to get Kamarian Franklin. It's something that we've been saying.
Yeah.
You never know with 17, 18-year-old kids how it's going to go, especially late when they start feeling that real pressure. But right now, Auburn's sitting in the catbird seat. And if Auburn has 3 5-star, just imagine. So recruiting's about relationships. Hugh Freeze has not been at Auburn long. When he took the job, you automatically start out 2 years behind because these other places where the head coaches and they've had continuity, they've been recruiting these kids for a while. The fact that he flipped a Georgia commit, a high Georgia commit that they wanted, the Riddick kid. Then you flip Perry Thompson, a 5-star wide receiver committed to Bama from Foley. That doesn't happen, right? That's Julio Jones and Robert Lester stomping grounds. Auburn doesn't go into Foley and get kids. You got him. Now, if you're able to go get a 5-star defensive lineman and you just got TJ Lindsey that committed, for Auburn to compete with the Georgias and Alabamas consistently, it's going to take a lot more Kamarian Franklins than it will wide receivers and DBs. And that's not a knock. You want the best DBs and wide receivers out there. That's not what I'm saying. But if you want to bridge the gap, this game is won and lost up front. The reason why the SEC slaps other conferences around is because they're bigger and better and deeper up front. That's where you bridge the gap, and that it would be a huge pull for Auburn. I think they're in great shape. Yeah,
it's just this late push by Auburn to seemingly land Kamarian Franklin, and I think it means a lot that he made like a last-second trip to Auburn right before the dead period started back. I mean, I think that's always telling. Track the kids' visits. That certainly means something. But just Auburn, and it's really trickled down to the Auburn fan base, this mindset of no one is off limits anymore is one of the most empowering things I've seen with Auburn recruiting maybe ever.
And Zac, here's why. And I've said this to you, off air. I believe I've said it on air. I've got no personal animus towards Brian Harsin. None. And I was so disappointed because I was in the business. I always want to give guys benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
I thought Brian Harsin having the guts to get out of his comfort zone and come to the SEC, I thought that said a lot about how hard he was going to work in recruiting, how much he understood what he was getting into. But Brian Harsin did not want to recruit the way that you have to. I mean, Nick Saban's the greatest of all time. I know it's Auburn show, but if we're going to be honest with ourselves, Nick Saban's the greatest of all time.
Sure.
And he works as hard as any coach does in recruiting, even now. Kirby Smart won back-to-back natties. He's out on the recruiting trail doing as much as anybody. Brian Harsin did not put in the work for Auburn to be able to recruit at a high level. He's a house cat, wanted his milk brought to him. Hugh Freeze understands at a place like Auburn, number one, you can go get them. Because Auburn ain't afraid of damn nobody. Nobody. You can win there. It's a golden egg place. It's a place you can win. You can stand up to everybody else. You look left, you look right, and they're right there. You can win at Auburn. You got everything here, the resources. The town runs on the football program, the fan base, and Auburn's all together right now. They're all aligned. We've talked about that before on this show. But Hugh Freeze understands the work that it takes, and he understands how important it is. And he's got a second chance. He saw his professional life flash before his eyes,
right.
And it's amazing what that does to somebody that's truly a good person. But Hugh Freeze is putting in the work. This staff is putting in the work. They understand what it's, and guess what? They want to win. They want to win as bad as anybody. And Auburn is in such good hands that you got a guy that doesn't want to just open the door. He wants to kick it down and run in like the Kool-Aid guy. And that's what Auburn's doing right now. And if they can go out and show improvement on the field in year one and keep that momentum, there is no telling what Hugh Freeze can do at Auburn. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because when they talk about Hugh Freeze in this negative light, I call it the recess rule. You pick on the people that you're worried about. You make fun of the people that you're worried about. And Hugh Freeze is out here just grabbing more 5 stars than a telescope, and people are starting to get worried. So I'm just telling you right now, Auburn's in great hands. I think you're going to continue to see the momentum in recruiting. And he hasn't even started. He didn't even have the 2-3 year relationship yet. Wait till that happens with that new facility now, and then showing improvement on the field. I'm going to tell you what, you poke the bear long enough, eventually he wakes up and rips your face off. And that's what Hugh Freeze is waiting to do.
Jake Crain, how can people check out everything you've got going on, brother?
Man, it's really easy. We're literally like 4,000 subs away from 100,000 on YouTube. So
let's get them there, folks.
Yeah,
let's get them there.
Let's get there, man. I want to have that party before college football season. We got 9 days till college football kicks off. So yeah, just go to YouTube. It's Crain and Company, Crainn Company. We're live each weekday morning, 6:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. Central. We're going to have a Sunday recap show where we're talking everything college football. We have live call-ins, a live chat. Great guests. Just had Tim Brando on today. Just had Brandon Marcello. We get Tom Luganville on all the time, former players too, and coaches. So come check us out, man. It's a good time.
Yep, it's worth it. Be sure to check it out, and let's get them to 10,000 subs, folks.
100,000.
I'm so sorry. 100,000. I left off a zero. Zeros matter, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Good, bro. I'm trying to get like you, man.
Be sure to check out my written work at auburndaily.com, and we will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.